Today we've got a great story of revenge against a PE teacher who forced kids with asthma to run. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, a truck driver's revenge against an entitled driver. This happened late 2023. The revenge wasn't my doing, but it was spectacular to witness. I had an appointment about 30 minutes north of my home through the hills of the Bay Area, but the ride back took 3 hours via a detour because of a freeway closure. When this happened, we'd already been stuck on the detour a couple of hours, surrounded by hills on both sides, and had resigned ourselves to our fate. We were inching forward behind the person ahead who was just as stuck as we were when a Tesla decided he shouldn't have to wait. He sped by on the left shoulder until he ran out of space between the center divide and a big truck. He kept nosing forward like he expected the truck to move enough for him to get by, but the truck driver didn't give a crap and wasn't moving over. We all watched the slow motion crash as bit by bit the trailer scraped along the side of the Tesla. It reminded me of a car getting slowly crushed in a junkyard. When it reached the rear view mirror, the whole side of the car was literally lifted a foot off the ground until the mirror ripped off. Then it loudly crashed back down. It was the only entertainment we had. People were actually clapping. I mean, even though they're an entitled driver and this whole thing shouldn't have even had to have happened, I think I would be in OP's position just still feeling bad for the dude. I mean, some people probably do deserve it, but man, that sucks. Square Piglet 9183 commented, "Drive down Highway 101 a lot to Monterey County. There is one portion of the road that has a merge lane going to the 2 lanes. Big truck next to me, I drive next to him and motion I'll stop to let enough space to create to let him merge in. He motions no for me to keep going as he's intentionally blocking the dive bombers who move into the merge lane, cram ahead, and then force their way in further down. I love that man and think of him every time I hit that stretch of road." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is, no, you can't have New Year's Eve off. So I started a new job this year, and up until recently, I've been genuinely enjoying it. There's some colleagues I've bonded with really well, and I'm actually really good at what I do. I work in primary care for the NHS, UK, and patients are always telling me how helpful and how kind I am. Since I joined in January, 6 patients have bought me chocolates or flowers by way of a thank you for fixing certain problems for them. For the first time in a really long time, I feel like I found some sort of calling, as lame as that sounds. But recently, my days have become increasingly difficult. 4 months into my employment, my colleague, let's call her Trish, who trained me up, had to take some time out for a health issue. So I spent 3 months basically doing the job without her. And at times, it was incredibly stressful being the only person able to perform the job. Admittedly, there was maybe 1 or 2 days it was too much and I had to run off for a small cry before getting back out there. However, eventually ended up taking it in my stride and thus gained praise and respect from colleagues and patients alike. But when it was said that Trish was coming back, I was relieved because I thought it would give me a bit more breathing room. I was wrong. Now, I'll preface all of this by saying that Trish isn't particularly well liked. She's known for being blunt to the point of cruelty both to patients and coworkers. She's snappy and rude to pretty much everyone. There's a negative comments regarding her on Google for crying out loud. She's had umpteen complaints against her, but they keep her around as she's worked there for around 20 plus years. When she went on leave, granted I didn't know her that well, but we got on well, and in spite of everyone bad-mouthing her behind her back or making snarky comments when she was in a different room, I stood up for her. No one particularly was overjoyed she was coming back from leave, other than me. For the first few days she was back, she went straight back to trying to train me in spite of the fact that I'd been doing everything solo since her absence, which rubbed me up the wrong way a little, but I ignored it. The last time I saw her, I was still regularly asking questions, so that's fair enough. But even though she could see I was quite capable and competent, she kept talking to me like a moron, so I had to be quite blunt with her and tell her that I'd been doing the job by myself perfectly well with zero help from her or anyone, so I didn't need to be refreshed with training. Since then, July, the relationship has soured somewhat. We're civil when it comes to work stuff, but outside of that, we don't really talk until a couple of weeks ago. I had a particularly difficult patient call up 3 days in a row and I just needed to vent. In my head, it came under the headline of work-related, so I vented to Trish about the patient. She agreed the patient was difficult and I did the correct thing for them, etc. I thanked her for letting me blow off some steam about it and went to do something else. I forgot something though, so I went back and caught Trish benching about me to 2 other colleagues, calling me soft, a whiny cow, I just need to grow up and get on with it, etc. She was like a deer in headlights. Nothing was said between us, but the whole next day she may as well have been kissing my butt. Now, my supervisor messaged me the other day, an extra holiday day around Christmas. Trish is on annual leave currently, so the supervisor hadn't yet asked which extra day she wanted. From previous conversations with Trish, I know she wanted to take the last few days of the year off so she could go over to Europe and spend New Year's Eve with her adult child. After the way she's treated me the last 2 months, I felt like being incredibly petty, so I asked for the day I knew she wanted, and asked to use a couple of my annual leave days as I have family commitments, meaning I had 3 days off total following the weekend. This was also going to be Trish's plan. My supervisor gave them to me, so that now means Trish won't be able to take the days off as there won't be any cover. I also know she's already booked her hotel and flights and she was just waiting for the supervisors to bring up the extra holidays. So freak you, Trish. I think the obvious problem here is she went and booked all this stuff without actually getting it confirmed. You want to talk about somebody that needs some training? Sounds like she's gonna learn some stuff come New Year's Eve. Obsessive commented, I applaud your pettiness. This was pretty great. I'm still learning at my job not to be too chatty or friendly with people because they can go right behind your back and badmouth you. Some people like to stir the pot, so you threw the pot on top of Trish's head. Well done. OP responded saying, yeah, it's one of those stupid lessons that's never really stuck for me. I'm very quick to make friends with people or label people my friends, and I've been burned by that so many times, especially when it comes to work colleagues. I'm too trusting, I guess, but the people you work with are rarely your true friends. Our next story is, want to play favorites with my sister? I'll play favorites with my parents. So it was my, female 17, birthday yesterday, and I got a message from my mother saying that she couldn't afford to get me a birthday present. For the 3rd year in a row, mind you. Now, obviously, I understood that yesterday. I mean, things happen. Live and let die, right? Only to find out this morning that she gave my little sister at least 20 British pounds for her birthday, a mere 13 days ago today. You'd think she'd have money set aside for her eldest too, but apparently not. Now, I've always hated when she got me gifts via my dad because it never meant much to me then. Heck, I'd even take an old book of hers she didn't read anymore. I'm genuinely not picky over the presents, so that means that she's played favorites again. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. A bit of context here. I do not live with my parents, I live with my grandparents. Also, my parents love chocolate cake, as do I. And the way I see things, if you want to play favorites on my birthday for the 14th year in a row, then it's my turn. I got a really nice chocolate cake from my grandparents yesterday, and I always go to see my parents the day after my birthday, mostly because I can't stand my mother most of the time, and she would always try to make the day about her, no doubt. Now, when I go to see my parents after my birthday, I always bring them a slice of cake each. Same size so they can't argue. Here's where I may be petty here, because this year, I'm only giving my dad a slice of cake. He got me a new cosplay that I've been wanting for a few months now, but he spent a similar amount on my little sister for her birthday because he doesn't have favorites. If my mother wants to play favorites with her kids, then I'm showing her just what it feels like to be left out. Hope your lack of cake spells out my disappointment in you. I definitely feel bad for OP here. I almost feel like OP not giving them a slice of cake is just going to kind of reaffirm their behaviors and confirm, you know what, I was right by playing favorites and cutting OP off. It's just so disappointing. 3 Heathen's mom commented, OP, consider taking your father a slice that is double the usual size, as it includes what your mother would have gotten. Our next story is today's obligatory petty parking lot revenge story. I was at my local today. We have a minor sporting event coming up, and the lot was full. I'd loaded my groceries and returned the car to the front of the store. I walked back to my Jeep, got in, and put it in reverse. I glanced left. I then focused on right, as this was a one-way parking lot lane. I saw a flash of blue out of the corner of my eye and realized a blue SUV had come up the one-way lane the wrong way. I braked hard and saw them do a full U-turn at the front of the store in anticipation of taking my spot. They turned into my lane with their right blinker on, but their butt end was still squarely in that two-way area at the front of the store where the carts come back and forth. I backed up and saw them waiting, blinker on, and realized I had nowhere to be. I crawled back forward into my spot but kept my reverse lights on. Blue SUV honked a couple of times, but I ignored her. It was a younger gal with long dreads. Soon enough, her blocking of the main entrance caused some honking and she was forced to drive down my lane. As she passed, I began backing out. The honking car stopped, saw my reversing, and gave me plenty of room. As I planned, honking car, red sedan, got my spot. Blue SUV had made a quick spin around on the lot in hopes of getting my spot. I made it a point to accelerate quickly into the main lane at the front of the store as red sedan was entering my space. I turned to the left diagonally, blue SUV's way. I told the girlfriend to act cool and light a smoke. She was on board and we sat there for a short while, blocking blue SUV from turning or even driving forward. The 20-ish Karen in training raging and cursing us all the while. As they backed up with the intention of driving around us, we pulled forward and exited the lot. Girlfriend blew her a kiss as we drove away. Let's just be glad this was a Karen in training and not a 20-ish already Karen that has nothing to lose with a multi-ton vehicle. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love hearing stories like this, but I would just chicken out of doing anything like this in real life. I'm just too afraid of somebody snapping and hopping out of the vehicle with something in their hands, or kind of like I alluded to, somebody who has nothing to lose and a gas pedal to use. This next story is, deny my new machine? Meet Honey Badger. As a minority female working in oil and gas IT for 20 plus years, let's just say my reaction for mansplaining is more like a honey badger than the sweet little girl these white boys think I am. My work laptop is broken. It has been since the day I received it, but I can restart/reinstall apps and/or tolerate it mostly. I am a remote worker, so my biggest beef is with MS Teams constantly failing. Recently, I got assigned to a big project and my issues were noticed by some important people, so they expedited my ticket and I was on my way to a new machine. Hooray! Cue Rick, self-proclaimed expert on Microsoft Teams who not only axed my new laptop, but decided to call me for an hour mansplaining how all my issues are caused by lag or internet. Honey Badger mode activated. First, I started reinstalling all my company-approved apps at least 3 times per week, even if they're not broken, just to show it on logs. Then I started submitting a serviceless desk every single freaking time there is the slightest bit of issue, prompting SD to have to spend at least 4 to 5 working hours a week trying to troubleshoot the same issues. Lastly, remember that big important project I got assigned to? I started hard rebooting my machine during important calls, just to make it look like my machine had crashed. I also faked MS Teams failure and will use my mobile to attend key meetings and asking my teammates to share their screen instead. Just to make it super petty, I will mouth my words and not make a sound so people thought I lost audio again. When leaders asked me if I'd contacted SD, I would innocently say, "But Rick said this was lag." Rick called, said they're skipping all steps and issuing me a new machine without me needing to submit a ticket. He apologized for all my inconveniences and said that just to assure I won't have any bad experiences going further, I will be placed on a premium license that is usually reserved for senior staff. I ended the call with Rick by asking in my sweetest voice possible, "So is it not lag after all?" "No, it is not," Rick said. "Thank you, Rick." OP's literally out here trying to come up with and use fake synthetic crashes and bugs just to make it seem worse. It's like one step short of like printing a picture out of them and then taping it to the front of the webcam and joining a video call and acting like the camera's frozen while you're talking and moving around. Domel commented, "You have my sympathies. Teams is a pile of hot garbage." All my coworkers have issues with it, and we're constantly having to switch between new teams and old teams, trying to see if one of them will work. More than once, I've given up and resorted to just using my iPad or my phone. Our next story is, years of bullying ended in one sparring session. During 8th and 9th grade, I was the target of a pretty big group of bullies. They made my life heck both inside and outside school. As we lived in a small community, it all started when I came to a local party with a bag of beer. The soon-to-be bully freshman came up to me, caught me off guard with a brass knuckle punch right in the solar plexus, robbed me of my bag, dragged me away, and made me kiss his feet before letting me leave. After that, the word got around quick that I was a bench that everyone could mess with, and they did. Entering school in the mornings and leaving in the afternoons were my most vulnerable times. They often grouped up, waiting to catch me entering or leaving. I was real stealthy and an explosive runner, so they didn't catch me often, but they never missed a chance to try. Sometimes they caught me off guard. One time when my mom was working the night shift and I had friends over, they invaded my apartment by climbing up the balcony, peeing all over it, and kicking in the front door. They never got inside, but they trashed it completely. We actually went to court for this. I started going to the gym frequently and made good progress for a couple of months until one day they all showed up and jumped me inside the gym. I never went back after that. My secret spot was revealed and my progress was over. I lived in constant fear during these years, unable to move outside without keeping all my peripherals on point. I developed tactics like being late to school every day and staying in the classroom of the last class as long as I could to avoid running into them in the cafeteria or entrance. I still remember the relief I felt after getting into the safe zone on Friday afternoons, knowing I could relax during the weekend, and I remember the aching anxiety every Sunday evening, knowing I had a full week of dodging abuse ahead of me. I was a martial arts fanatic, and when a Thai boxing club opened in my town, I was the first one there. I showed up at every class and loved every second of it. I trained for about a year until one day the key bullying group came inside. The word must have gotten around, and I thought this was the last time I'd be able to train. I never realized how strong I'd become during that year because I was still living in constant fear. But when they all hit the floor during warm-up out of exhaustion, I was baffled. I wasn't even sweaty yet. When it was time for sparring, I got paired up with one of them. He didn't stand a chance. He couldn't protect himself at all, and the few punches he threw were complete misses. I clunked him so many times I lost count during the two 2-minute rounds. I didn't hit hard. I still followed the rules and let him decide the pace and power. They all left mid-class after the sparring. The rest of that class, I was anxious because I knew they would be waiting outside to get me, like always. But to my surprise, they weren't there. The next time I ran into them, they completely ignored me. I was still afraid and ready to run, but they acted like I wasn't even there. It took a while to accept this, and I stayed ready when they were around me for months after that. It's crazy to think that it only took a couple of minutes to end years of abuse. Well, the awesome thing is a lot of people do take these classes for some kind of self-defense or just kind of building themselves up. Not very often do they literally get a chance to study, train, get good at their craft, and then go toe-to-toe with their bullies face-to-face in the very facility you've been learning all that stuff. I mean, honestly, just OP being there and them walking in on that class felt like such a beautiful thing. Because it's like, what are they going to do? Actually try to gang up on OP while they're in this Thai boxing class? Penalty Additional 968 commented, "Sometimes you just have to fight." The inverse happened to me at 15. School friend of mine had his boxing gloves in his bag when we were all getting changed for rugby. I tried them on, and another kid started pretend sparring with me. Only he actually then started landing bare knuckle punches. Only I had gloves, obviously. Having none of this, I threw 2 quick feint left jabs, went low with 2 body shots, then brought a right uppercut behind his guard. Knocked him down and his top lip blew up like a sausage. Only then did I notice how you could hear a pin drop in the changing room as everyone was watching. Half the boys in the year group saw that, and nobody ever messed with me again the whole of high school. Dad was a former Royal Marine and amateur boxer who represented England in his youth. I didn't even hit him at 50% power. This next story is, just make the dang coffee. A million years ago at my first office job, I successfully made the stipulation that I would not make coffee for the office. I explained that I didn't drink coffee and had no clue how to make it. It was 2 attorneys and myself in the office, and they both agreed that this was fair. Everything was fine for a couple of weeks until one of them was having a big deal meeting with opposing counsel and their client. He told me to make a pot of coffee. I reminded him that I didn't make coffee because I don't know how. He yelled at me to just make the dang coffee. Okay, sir. I figured there would be instructions on the coffee can and would just figure it out. Nope. The coffee was in a decorative canister with a spoon. Okay, 10-cup pot. Seemed reasonable that I would need 10 spoons of coffee. He poured a cup just before the people he was meeting with arrived and promptly spit it out. He started yelling at me for being defiant, which got the attention of the other attorney. The second attorney reminded him that I didn't know how to make coffee and asked if the first attorney had given me any instructions. I chimed up that I'd been yelled at to just make the dang coffee. Second attorney told the first attorney he deserved what he got and to go make his own dang coffee. Later in the day, I asked the second attorney if I needed to learn how to make coffee. He told me there was no reason for me to, and promised it would never come up again. I was never asked to make coffee again the entire time that I worked there. I mean, OP didn't explain exactly what their office job actually was, like if they were a legal aid or if they were more of like a secretary. I think the impressive thing here is OP got an office job at some kind of lawyer or attorney's office, and they managed to negotiate getting out of the making coffee duties and responsibilities. Lawyers and coffee just go hand in hand. It's just like that arduous, long, boring, draining job you need it for. Can you make another pot of coffee is probably like the second most common sentence in a lawyer's office, the first being, "Don't say anything, I'm on my way." The Darkeneck commented, "The first time I made coffee, I filled the filter to the top. I heard that it could etch concrete." Duke Pony commented, "When I was in the army, I ran a motor pool. The mechanics would come in at 4 a.m., make a pot, and then recycle the coffee through the machine a second time with another batch of fresh grounds. I just assumed that's how coffee was made." Later in life, I made a pot of coffee at a civilian job, and my boss just about had a stroke when he tried a cup. Our next story is, want me to do a long run just because I didn't bring you proof of asthma like last year? Now we'll all be late. So this is a story from my primary school. I had asthma pretty much all my life. Every year, my teachers wanted the same paper even though they knew me, they knew my conditions, and sometimes had to deal with me having asthma attacks during class. Around 13 to 14 years old, 7th grade in our school system, we had a year focused on running in PE. Also, the PE teacher was our homeroom teacher. She knew I have asthma and kept saying that unless I bring her the paper from doctor, like every year before, I'll have to do the runs. My petty revenge came in when we were doing what would be translated as cross-country running. It's 1,500 meters run, and even on the best days, that would be hard for me. So the class begins, and what was usual was that it was a double class, meaning it was 90 minutes. We started the jogging warm-up, and the teacher split us into 2 groups so we can fit on the jogging track. And unwisely, she put me into the second group. First group finished around 55 minutes into the class, then came time for our group. To my credit, I tried, but I started hyperventilating in the first 50 meters and had to slow down to a slow walk. And since I couldn't stop, I walked slowly. I could see the annoyance on her face, and it just gave me the serotonin to survive the rest of the day. Long story short, when I reached the finish line, it was 20 minutes into the next class, and nobody was happy about it, but the teacher had her dang time to fill in the table, and she didn't ask me for the paper again. Edit for clarification, the class took 90 minutes. The first 15 were mostly warm-up, 10 for organizing us, about 25 minutes for the first run, 10 for writing down the times, and a mini water break. The groups were counting each other's rounds, and the first group needed time to be able to function, 5 minutes for organizing at the start. At this point, it's about 25 minutes till the end of class. Since our breaks between classes were usually 5 minutes, the teacher let us go early so we could change back to normal clothes. We could go after we finished the run. The circumstances: our whole class was made of troublemakers and bad kids. It was also a hot and sunny day, and I personally tend to not hydrate. No shade around, no place to rest. I get that people can usually walk the 1.5 kilometers in the limit, but a person who's hyperventilating, overheating, and a dehydrated kid that tends to have joint injuries due to other conditions is not the same as a healthy adult. And I was a teenager who felt wronged and wanted to annoy the crap out of the teacher. Honestly, if you can't do it, you legitimately have some kind of condition or issue that you know is going to be an issue. Even if it makes a scene, if they're gonna flip out and try to give you detention or send you to the principal, I think it's better to do so rather than sacrifice your health in any kind of way or jeopardize yourself. Plus, once your parents catch wind of this, hopefully they will go right at bat for OP. Wyvern Jelly commented, "My nephew has a heart condition. It's in his file that he isn't expected to run for the fitness test or play certain sports. They had a new PE teacher partway through the year. Teacher refused to listen to him and thought he was making it up. He made it most of the way through, and then he collapsed. Mother-in-law wanted to sue the school. This is also the same teacher who told him to walk it off when he said his arms hurt after falling and ignored him for the rest of the class. Some of his classmates escorted him to the office. Turns out he broke both wrists. Mother-in-law now wants teacher fired. My mother-in-law is usually a forgiving person, but where my nephew is concerned, she will go on the warpath. Our next story is, manager at a car dealership learned a lesson. Maybe. Many years ago, I was in the process of buying a brand new sports car. My dream car. I had wanted this car since I was 12. I was young and in my 20s and wanted to reward myself for some recent business successes. I did the typical test drive at the local dealership, decided on the color, options, and so on, and was negotiating the price with a salesman. After that, he told me that they didn't actually have the car with the color and options at the dealership. They had to get it transported from another dealership about 30 miles away. This would take a few days, so I'd have to wait a week before I could take possession of the new car. I didn't think that it was too unreasonable, so I agreed and would come back a week later. We finished the paperwork with the manager, signed everything, and was making to leave when I noticed something. They were going to charge me a $150 transportation fee to move the car from the other dealership. They never told me about this additional fee during the negotiation process, so I was a bit frustrated and told them so. For $150, I could go get the car myself. The manager then tells me, "It's too bad you already signed the contract. You should have been more observant. We can't take the charge off now," with a smug grin on his face and a tone that told me he was very happy about this. I wasn't at all happy and let him know it, but there was nothing I could do at that point. The contract was signed. A week later, I came to pick up my new sports car. When I arrived, the same manager came up to me and asks me to speak with me in the office. He explained that there was a mistake with the invoice. The car I was buying had all the options on it. It was fully loaded with everything, including what they called a gold package, where the emblem and lettering on the car was in gold instead of the standard silver. He explained that this package came with an additional cost of $400, but they had neglected to add this cost to the invoice. I needed to make up that difference. I didn't even know a gold package was an option. They never mentioned it before. Cue my petty revenge. I smiled my best smug grin and told him, "It's too bad you already signed the contract. You should have been more observant." I paused a bit to let that sink in and then said, "I'm going to pick up my car with the VIN that's on the contract for the price on the contract," and stood up. He hung his head in defeat, knowing there was nothing he could do about it since he had signed the contract. If he hadn't treated me the way he did a week earlier, I might have considered negotiating a new price, but I felt he deserved to be put in his place, and the revenge was sweet. The charge was one thing, but his attitude was obnoxious. It was only a $250 difference, but the satisfaction was priceless. He handed me the keys and I drove off in my new sports car feeling great. The gold looked better with my color choice than the silver would have anyway. I almost was trying to figure to myself, is this some kind of weird negotiating tactic to make OP feel happy and satisfied with the vehicle they drove away with? But then I realized that's probably not a good idea, because even though OP's gonna leave feeling like they've won, it's going to be with a complete sour taste in their mouth, unless there really was a way for OP to negotiate that $150 that wasn't disclosed to them off, and this was some 4D chess to make sure that OP just takes it and runs. Not the Mama 58 commented, "When I was 31, my husband was transferred to San Diego by the Navy. I was working and needed a new car. Off I went to the dealership, test drove a car, and decided it was what I wanted. The salesman handed me over to their money guy and crap fell apart. I was trading in a car that still ran well and was in good shape but had some miles on it. Money man offered me $250 for a trade-in, then proceeded to act like I was a stupid female when I told him another dealership would give me $800. He basically called me a liar, and he wanted to talk to my husband first since I clearly didn't have the brain power to make this huge, life-altering decision. What a boob. I explained Hub was at sea and the car was going to be mine. I noped out of there shaking my head in disbelief. The poor salesman asked what happened as I was walking out, why he lost his sale, and I told him to talk to Money Man. 2 days later, I bought a car from a different dealership and got a great deal on it. The owner of the first dealership actually called me and also asked what happened to this sure sale. I told him everything that had transpired and that the Money Man cost him the sale. I also told him I was telling every Navy wife I knew to steer clear of his business. I got a call then from the salesman who apologized and told me the Money Man was fired. I was a happy camper, but didn't back down. I hope they hired someone less misogynistic. Even 30 years ago, one didn't need a you-know-what to buy a car. I just want to add a quick tack onto this comment and ask, how many of you guys actually believe 30 years ago that they even actually fired that guy? They probably just called OP and said, hey, listen, we fired the guy, don't worry, that'll never happen again. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That's it, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.